Here on the reserve, we're now heading into the depths of winter, and November's seen lots of changes with new arrivals coming to the site. Out on the tackpiece and the dumbles, our white-fronted goose flock is gradually increasing, and in mid-November we saw the first of our Buick swans really arrive en masse, with over 50 birds turning up in just a few days, and that included Croupier, one of our oldest birds. He's now 27 years old, back for his 28th season here on the rushy behind us. So over the next few weeks, we hope to see lots more swans arrive to join Croupier and the rest of the flock here on the rushy. Across the reserve, our wintering numbers hit their peak in early January. Anything up to 30,000 birds can rely on this part of the reserve and the estuary too. And with so many birds around at this time of year, one of the most common questions we get asked is how do we actually count that many birds? For some of the species which form large flocks, things like widgeon and lapwing, we will occasionally estimate them, so counting groups of 10 or 100 and multiplying that across the area that we can see. But at least once per month, as part of the National Wetland Bird Survey, which takes place across wetland sites in the UK, we will actually be trying to count every single bird that's on site. For smaller groups of birds, such as the tufted duck and the pochard we've got out behind me, it's nice and easy to count those and add them all together for the site. But if you're heading out to the tack piece or the top new piece and you're faced with a carpet of 2,000 or 3,000 widgeon, we find the easiest way to get on top of those and count the birds are using our clickers. Once we've got all of those numbers together, we can then use them to inform the management of the reserve and monitor how we're doing, and also feed them into national and international censuses as well to see how populations are doing right across the world. So as the winter progresses and more wildfowls start to arrive here on the reserve, we're going to be gearing up for our wild winter weekend on the 5th and 6th of January. It's going to be a weekend filled with loads of special activities, so you can come and find out more about the ducks, geese, swans and all the other birds that use the reserve during the winter.
This winter, in total, we've decided to add a new engaging activity for you, the visitors, to experience when you visit Slimbridge. We're going to show you the different feeding strategies that amphibians use during our feed demonstrations. We're going to give you a sneak preview of what you're going to be able to see during these feed demonstrations, showing you the mud puppies and the European tree frogs. With the mud puppies, we feed them with tweezers because they can be a little bit aggressive. So what we try and do is make sure each of the mud puppies has a bit of food in their mouth before we end up with scatter feeding so they can forage for the food for themselves. If you're regular visitors at Slimbridge, you've probably noticed that the mud puppies are very active during the autumn time, leading into winter. And that's because they're fattening themselves up, ready for the breeding season. The females are starting to develop their eggs, ready for spring. The European tree frogs are less aggressive, so we don't have to use tweezers to feed them. We can just scatter feed, chuck crickets into the enclosure, and they'll come and forage for themselves. So this winter, don't miss out on coming along to some of our feed demonstrations here at Slimbridge in Toad Hall.
We tend to think of flamingos as tropical birds living in hot environments. And this is true for some populations of some species. The Caribbean flamingo, for example, there's a clue in its name. But for some of the species of flamingo, they live in parts of the world where the climate would make the British winter look positively warm. The 3 South American species, Chilean, Andean and James flamingos, all live in environments that can be very bleak, very inhospitable and very cold throughout much of the year. The birds here at WWT Slimbridge and the other centres that house flamingos will have some extra management in the winter time. If their pools ice over or if there's driving wind and rain, we will keep birds in snug and warm. It's our little lesser flamingos and our bright orange Caribbean flamingos that really need this extra TLC in the winter time. Some of the other species cope much better when the temperature plummets. So the next time that you come for your winter wanderings here at Slimbridge, see if you can see those flamingos that like it a bit more tropical and those ones that have evolved to cope with the weather when it's a little bit more chilly.